You know, you're all entering a brand new stage of the transformative process. It is a stage in this process that completes what has begun so long ago in your lives. And what is completed is your own wholeness. An abstract term in appearance, masking a reality that truly transforms you from all that you have ever been. In every human incarnation that you have undertaken, you have been groping in the dark. All you have known are lies, evasions, shadows, half-truths, illusion, operating in the dark, separated from yourself, seeing appearances that are not reality, exploring the nature of these illusions. Exploring. Now that sounds like you really know what you're doing. But you haven't known consciously what you were doing because you have been separated from your own true knowledge, from your own true identity, from the wider identity that encompasses all of these incarnations, and that in itself is but one shell, one cell in the body of the gods that you are. You have been exploring the dark, wandering in the dark, bumping into things in the dark, frightened of the dark, creating monsters in the dark, dwelling far from all true comprehension. The purpose being in finding your way down these dark corridors of finding the light once more, of going through blind alley after blind alley, of betraying yourself over and over again, each of you your own Judas, in this long dark time that was set in motion by Jesus the Christ, offering in that image of man and God united, the human and the divine as one, an image and a model and a promise. Follow the life of that man-God, and you will find yourselves human gods. We have said all along, you're gods in training. And now you are reaching a stage of wholeness that is the completion of the first major stage of that training, in which you regain your memory, you find your understanding, you complete the path that has wandered in these dark areas all of this time. Now, in emulating Jesus, your path has taken you into the wilderness, into temptation, into a profound unawareness of your true purpose and your true identity. Follow the life as it has been recorded for you of Jesus Christ. But look at it with eyes that are opening, not with knee-jerk reactions, not with the ghosts of old Sunday school lessons ringing in your ears, but by looking into your own lives and your own process and seeing the path that Christ took. You have been in this life, the life that you have earned and the life that you have chosen for your transformation, the life that is a part of a great human evolutionary leap into triunity, body, mind, and spirit united. You have followed this path, and you have lived the life of Christ, but all unknowingly. Now the scales fall from your eyes. See in your own life the pathway that led into death and to rebirth. The life was a life of analogies and parables, similes, metaphors, symbols, clues to the game, the great game that you have all been playing, looking for the light. And you've looked in the strangest places for the light. And you have deliberately hidden the light from yourselves. You have imagined a false light. You have described in detail exactly what is required to come into wholeness, to find the kingdom of God. And you have manufactured lie after lie, untruth after untruth. You have explored the darkness in your own soul of bigotry, of murder, lies. All of the evasions that you could muster to continually blind yourself from truth. But in each of those incarnations, in each of those explorations, however unknowing you seem to be, in the darkest of your experiences, in the blackest night of your soul, what you have learned, however negative it may appear to have been, has gathered understanding to you in potential, experience, mounting up, leading to inescapable spiritual conclusions. Conclusions that you are reaching in this chosen life. You have gone through the process of the death of the old self, the ego-dominated, limited, logic-mad, old, tired self. Now, as you are completing that process of painful release of what you had believed about yourself, you stand empty. When the Christ energy began its release last spring, that enormous power was felt in your lives as disruption. But it was the power of love that you drew into you with every breath through the crown chakra, the entry point for the Christ energy that has come into you and integrated with your own energy, that has transformed in vital ways your lives, has changed the way you look at things, has broadened your outlook and widened your perspective. And now you look down the next step of this journey. While ego self may still have its ghostly clutches on you, while you still may be responding to a degree in old ways through knee-jerk reactions to old stimuli, you have, and your timing is not identical, but there's a great similarity because your timing follows the rhythmic release of this transformative energy. You have, in your various ways, let go of many of the fears that have blocked you throughout your life. By willingly releasing yourself into the guidance of your own higher nature, the higher self that is a part of God, aware of your true nature, of your true selves, your purpose, your reason for being here, all that you need to know, for so long locked within you, is now by your own permission being released. You are being redirected. You have been following the pathway to the crucifixion, willingly, as Christ traveled that pathway. That apparent sacrifice, that gift given, would be meaningless if it had been extorted from him, forced from him. But as Christ walked that path to certain death, in the faith, and remember this, if it sounds easy, well, he's God, he knows he's just going to be dead for a little while and then rise again. And I could do that myself. But remember that he was as you, half divine, half human, prey to temptation, to fears, to the darkness of his own sexual nature. As each of you, it would be meaningless if your path was not his path, if he stood somehow above you, bestriding the earth like a colossus. A nice thing to watch, but how could you emulate such a distant figure? You have been, in these past 2,000 years of incarnations, learning to be Christ by accepting the energy of Christ, by accepting the understanding of Christ, by growing into the Christ nature, until now you are all brothers and sisters of Christ, all the sons and the daughters of God. The Christ energy that you are drawing into you is not some separate thing. It's not theoretical, an abstract concept. It is a true energy that is truly transforming you, not passively, but by triggering events and conditions in your lives that will lead you through the transformation, through the pathway to the cross and the triumph beyond. All of you in this time are facing that death and rebirth, letting go of the fear, cautiously moving forward, bravely opening to the opportunities of your own change. Frightened, unused to the power that you are receiving, unaware of its vast, encompassing energy, only dimly aware of your own true nature. But that's a lot better than it has been. Beginning to awaken. Now, for some of you, the experience has been a gentle hand at the shoulder, wake up, wake up. But not very many of you. For most of you, it has been, wake up! Repeated. Until you think, am I awake? Or am I being beaten into insensibility? Yes, you are. Both. Because what you have built within, not just in this incarnation, this is the product of all of the incarnations that you are surrounded by. What you have built is a powerful defense, a powerful ego, a powerful belief in the institutions of fear that dominate your life individually and collectively. You have deeply invested in a limited and blinkered view of reality, as distorted as the image in a kaleidoscope. You cannot see reality, but you deeply believe in its fearsome aspects. You have created, in that limitation, a reality to fit your fears. A reality that prevents you from doing that discourages you from doing that you find it is socially humiliating to do this or to make that choice. You box yourself in, thinking you are looking for security. And all you are finding is imprisonment. Imprisonment in a whole series of negative beliefs that have acted collectively to prevent you from seeing your nature, developing it, and experiencing it. I can't do that. Oh, that's too big a job for me. Why, I'm just little me. And your self-imposed littleness and the anger that is built in you from the nature of your own imbalance, by the inner knowledge that you're out of whack, has caused wars. Wars among nations, wars among peoples, fights in families, arguments as you scream at the car in front of you. You've surrounded yourselves with negativity in your profound belief in the reality of all that you fear. You have not expressed that same belief, that same strength, in the reality of love, of joy, of positive results. You know, look at your own mythology. Look at the ideas of religion that have arisen among humans over the past thousands of years. And if you look at it critically, you'll see that all that is fear is dramatic and realistic. The visions of hell, of Satan, of the dark forces. What drama, what reality, how convincing. And then look at the absolutely pale and insipid picture that you have created of heaven. You can see what you've really been interested in. And so you have been dwelling in the house of darkness, but finding your way slowly toward the dim light of dawn and wakefulness. This is the life in which you wake up. But the waking is painful. You've been in a coma. And you blink an eye. What on earth was that? And you take a little longer blink. What on earth was that? You don't know the reality when you see it. It seems frightening to you. A world without fear. A world in which you must have the courage to leap over cliffs. A world in which you must have the courage to completely open yourself to possibility. Well, it really doesn't take any courage at all. It only takes courage when you're scared stiff. When you start doing it. When you start taking positive actions based upon your intuition, you get positive results, and that's a lot of positive reinforcement, and it gets easier. And you begin to build your image of joy with the power that your image of fear once had. But the process of getting from there to there is a difficult one. There's a sort of law that the stronger you are, the stronger is your resistance to understanding of your own nature. And that's what this is about. Who am I? Who am I really? And who you are is not, in any case, who you have thought you were. And the most brilliant intellect, creating the most detailed theory, is totally wide of the mark when he tries to focus in on his own nature. Because you will create lies and distortions as clever and as subtle as you are. You're not going to be fooled by the simple lies. You need a really detailed, realistic, convincing lie. And when you have made up that lie about who you are, and remember, the lie isn't going to be obvious. It's going to be just enough to distort your vision, to prevent you from reaching wholeness. Because you are your own worst enemy, because you're divided in half. And the half that's been in charge doesn't know what it's doing. And it does everything it can to suppress your desire to unite with the other half that does know what it's doing. And where the light hits the darkness disappears. And wholeness results. But that part of you that's in the dark doesn't know that. All it knows is that its rule is being challenged. That for some God knows why reason, you want to let all of the dark secrets and fears out of the closet within, where your ego self has so carefully hidden it. What do you want to bring that up for? That's scary. Remember how scary that was when you were 3 years old? Oh, that was awful. And we hid it away so you wouldn't have to look at it anymore. And then when you were 4, and then when you were 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10, until your entire interior is filled with closets stuffed with fear that you have to detour around in your life. And so you detour and wonder why you never get anywhere. But now, because you have allowed the door to open a crack and a little bit of light to enter, enough so that you realize that the light is what you want. That you're sick of the darkness and sick of the detours, sick of the locked closets, sick of all of the non-plussing reasons that you never get what you want, that you never feel really good about yourself, that you constantly trip yourself up and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, and finally, you're sick and tired of it enough to open the door a crack and let the light shine in and make a commitment of your own willingness, in your own ignorance, saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to open that door any farther. I don't know how to flood myself with light. I don't know how to rid myself of my fears. But I'm willing. Whew. To be willing to do all that is an act of courage and an act of faith that sets everything else in motion. Well, you've done that. And your lives are so in motion that you spend a lot of time seasick. But one way and another, you've opened this door, and you've opened that door, and you've let out this fear, and you've let out that fear, and you feel the changes going on within you. You know that you're not the person that you were. You know that you see things a little more clearly. You know that you feel more love and are able to give more love. You know that you're changing. You know that it's not your imagination, that you're not nuts, like your father or your mother or your wife or your next-door neighbor thinks. You've gotten enough confirmation to know, yes, this is a real path. It's really going somewhere. I still don't know where, but it's real. Well, that's part of the journey. The journey that is fueled by your own faith, your own courage, your own willingness. And you have moved along that pathway, dealing with many of those dark closets, and now you have reached a point when you are dealing with the very deepest roots, as we indicated in earlier messages, many of them tangled in the sexuality, many of them focused in the third chakra, all of the dependencies that you have gathered to you to protect you and enslave you. Now you're down to the nitty-gritty. Now you're down to the last defenses, the inner guard, the toughest of all, who will not be moved. And the stronger you are, and the greater your potential, and the mightier your spirit, the harder you fight. And we say to you, not at all in jest, that this period of time, roughly culminating next spring, is the time in which all of the lessons that you've learned, all of the understanding that you've received, all the faith that you've built, all the joy and the love that you have allowed in you, combines to see you through the darkest night of the soul, where you accept and meet your greatest challenge, the challenge of finally releasing the last defenses that have separated you from yourself and reaching your wholeness. And you know from your experience along this path that there hasn't been a single step that was easy. Each time, your strength has been challenged to its fullest. And as your strength builds, so do the challenges. This is the final challenge. Pulling out the last wedge that separates you from your true nature, that attempts to prevent you from seeing the light, from becoming whole and beginning a really glorious new journey on the human path, where you cease to be at war with yourselves and with each other. When you truly do finally unite within, and unite and join hands with all of the other humans that are component parts of the same God. And your gaze moves out into physical space and moves within into interdimensional space. And your real explorations and your real purpose as a race of beings begins. So there's a wonderful carrot dangling in front of you to give you courage in the dark. Now, Paul spoke of Joan. Joan Davies, another teacher, channel, one who has used her own understanding and ability, who has used her own experiences, her sorrows and her pains, to help bring others to the light. You know, these channels and these teachers do not at all stand above you, any more than Jesus stood above you, any more than you stand above any other human being. In order to teach, they must learn what you're learning. In order to be who they are, they must be strong. And usually they are among those who raise the strongest defenses. defending the last perimeter. Thus far, but no farther. No farther. But there's more than one level of reality going on here, and more than one voice being heard. In the case of Joan, at the level of her higher self, she has known exactly what must be done, the path that must be taken. And because of her own range of knowledge and psychic spiritual sensitivity, she had enough of an awareness of the difficulty of the path that lay ahead to fuel her defenses even more. For one who sees so well, to blind herself so that she could not see the one thing that had to be seen. Not the accident, quote unquote, that befell her, but the purpose behind it. As Jesus contemplated the reality of crucifixion, do you think he raced gladly toward the cross? Do you think he was not terrified, trying desperately to think of any other way that the purpose could be fulfilled? He was human enough to fear the pain, the humiliation, the fear of death, but divine enough to do what must be done, so that in achieving his own wholeness, the triumph of the Spirit that unites the man and the God in a true human being, in order to do all of that, he must first die. And that had to be accepted. Accepted, of course, first at the level of his higher nature, the Christ. But finally, experienced by Jesus, the man. None of you are different. It doesn't mean that every one of you is going to get into a near-fatal automobile accident or anything of that magnitude. What it means is that you're going to be dealing with the deepest roots of your fears. But because you have prepared yourself, because you have followed this path, you will greet those fears, meet those fears, and profit immeasurably from your experience. The widening ripples and reverberations of the event that occurred with Joan is a part of the transformative process for her and for many, many others. As example of the power and the strength of a triune human being to heal not only physically, but to heal spiritually, to inspire, so that each of you who are being reborn as Christ can see the process and believe in the process and apply it to yourself. For many of you, the challenge, which will always seem more than you can handle, will seem to someone else relatively minor. Changing of a relationship, changing of work pattern, creating a situation of forgiveness between you and parents, revising your feelings and understanding of yourselves in many different ways. But always the example must be a bit more vivid. what has occurred to Joan was terribly frightening and intimidating to the human part of the equation, but a great gift on the part of the divine, a gift given willingly for the sake of her own transformation and of others, emulating Jesus the Christ, as each of you in your own way will. Do this in remembrance of me. Follow this example. Recognize the power of love to transform, that the grave ends nothing, that the fear of death is unreal, that all that you have believed, all that you have clung to, has been illusion. That step must be taken before you can ever find reality. And reality is what you're after. Because reality is love. The reality is wholeness. The reality is triumph. The reality is joy. That can claim you only while you identify simply and purely with the earth animal part of your own identity. You must begin increasingly to identify with the divine within you so that the merging can come. There's nothing wrong with being a human being. You've simply been doing it wrong. Now you're going to get a chance to really be a human being, and it's going to be a glorious thing. This is an opening to joy. And it is often very difficult to see the joy in a disrupted life, in a pattern broken, in a life apparently shattered. But each of you is going through that. You're all shattering images, old, false images, relationships that did not make sense, that were limiting rather than freeing, jobs, careers that were simply reflections of your own idea of your own limitedness, of your own littleness, of your own undeservingness. Lives that you have created to contain you and not to free you. Well, this is all a triumph over that. And the beginnings of triumph may sometimes seem like tragedy. But the doors that you see before you will not close but open. The relationship that ends is only a prelude to the heart, soul, spirit relationship that flows from the experience. You have made a bargain with God and with the universe in which you have exchanged your willingness for a guarantee of wholeness, a guarantee of eternal life. Now, that life is eternal has always been true, but like the tree falling in the forest with no one around to listen, is it true if no one believes in it? Well, yes, it is true, and the tree does make noise. The rest is sophistry. You're waking up. And when you first awaken, the vision is confusing. You still cling to sleep and to dreams that are vanishing. You're bewildered. But as you shake the sleep from you, as you open your eyes wide, you perceive the true reality. Do not shrink from the pain of your transformation. It too is illusion. The reward that comes is immeasurably greater than the trials that precede it. And that you must take on faith, as you have taken every step in this process. Every step has been rewarded. However dark the day seemed, however frightening the prospect, however painful the passage, every step that you've taken has been worth the fear you had invested into it and released from it. And every step that you have taken has built your strength. You're never going to be as strong as you think you need to be for every new step in the process. Always your knees shake. You say, oh no, that's too high a step. I'm going to have to grow a lot before I can make that one. But you grow in the attempt. And you've made every stage so far. You wouldn't be here. The energy of the Christ has been released. It has disrupted your lives. It has set you along new pathways. And now this second stage of the release is going to complete the death and rebirth process. Beyond that point, and while we're somewhat arbitrarily saying next spring, but many of you, your timing is a little different, but during the course of next year, and primarily the first half of next year, you're going to be ending your personal duality. It's already ended. It ended the moment you received the first bit of Christ energy last spring. It ended in reality. Now you've been proving to yourself that it is over. Because all it took was that one bit, the first entry of the energy into you, and the work was done in its essence. But a lot remained to be done in proving to yourself. A lot of closet cleaning. And now you've dusted out most of the closets and left them open to air and let the light flood them. And you've worked your way from the attic to the second floor and the first floor, and here you are in the basement. And the basement is the darkest place in the house. And the basement closets are the mustiest, the most inaccessible, the most frightening. But you proved up in the attic that the fears in those closets were illusion. And you proved on the second floor that the fears in those closets were illusion. And on the first floor, the same thing. And you're going to prove it now as you release the roots. Finish the house cleaning. And during the course of the next year, by mid-year, perhaps a little later, but by and large by mid-year, you will each one of you be embarked upon the beginnings, at least, of the work that is going to be your primary focus during the rest of this incarnation. The work, whether you get paid for it or whether it's the work that is the love of your heart, that is going to be your whole reason for being during the rest of this life. That is going to use every lesson you've ever learned, that's going to use the healing ability that has come to the surface, that's going to use all of the psychic spiritual abilities that come with wholeness. You are going to be an arrow seeking its target. And life, while it's going to be dramatic, while it is going to be on the world stage disruptive, we promise you, for each one of you, is going to grow more and more joyful. Joyful not in the sense of mad revelry, but in the soul spirit satisfying way that comes when you are using yourself to your best purpose, when you are truly experiencing your strength, when you have realized that your weakness and days of dependency and disbelief are over, when you are the tool that has found its true task, you will know a joy that is beyond comparison. Many of you are beginning to catch glimpses of that joy now. And it's not something that is far off in the future. It's not pie in the sky. You are the pioneers of a new evolution in humankind. One that takes place in a generation. You look on this world stage and you see the slow but accelerating decay and collapse of political institutions and economic institutions. You see the play of fear as it develops in terrorism, in racial and religious warfare, in starvation, in avarice, in an exhibition of all of the deadly sins. You see collapse. But within yourself, you've seen that collapse too. The collapse of a life that wasn't working, the collapse of a relationship that wasn't working, the collapse of an old belief about yourself that wasn't working for you. And it looked like collapse. But now as the new shoots appear above the surface, now as you glimpse the light that you have been looking for thousands of years, now you realize that the collapse was simply a clearing away to build upon a foundation of reality, a life of meaning, of purpose, of joy. And so, on the earth, the collapse that is taking place now, that is accelerating rapidly, will reach its apogee and its conclusion within little more than a dozen years. So don't focus on the collapse. Focus on the new shoots that are appearing. Focus upon the light that has dawned in your life and is dawning in thousands of lives every day, that is accelerating even more rapidly than the acceleration of the fear energy that is causing the collapse. A new reality is being born from the ashes of the old. The phoenix is rising again in your own life and in the lives of humankind. Wholeness is finally being reached. And as your work develops, and as your understanding develops, and as you look within and see God's heart beating in your breast, as you recognize the brotherhood of Christ, that He is not and never was a God to be worshipped, but an example to be followed, and you realize that each of you is Christ. Each of you is working miracles in your life and in your works. Each of you is God, the Father, the Son, the Spirit. The terms are sexist, but the reality is apparent. And it's your own reality. You cannot even glimpse now what it's going to mean to be a human being. The powers that you are just beginning to tap when they reach their maturity. If you could glimpse that now, you would say, how like a God, and how right. Remember that you are God's, that you are brothers and sisters of Christ, equal. That's what you've been working toward and searching for without knowing it all these years. That you are ending the lies. That you are finally taking off that Halloween mask and looking into the mirror and seeing your true self. That you are uniting one with the other, all of you awakening together and building a new reality, not based on fear, not based on ignorance, not based on darkness, but upon the knowledge of your God nature. There will be difficult times in the months ahead for each one of you. It's why you have been strengthened so that you are up to those times. It's why you have begun the process of networking, of touching each other, of learning to know each other. Because you need each other. You are each other. And as you unite with your soul mates, and as you unite with your fellow godlings, you add immeasurably to your strength, to your ability to survive and to thrive, to the ability to keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, to build upon a collapsing reality, a new reality in your own lives. And we want to say this: don't be frightened by what you see on television and what you see in your city and in your neighborhood, because nothing will occur in your lives that will not heal you, that will not move you forward. And we guarantee this: the day will come, and not so far in the future, when Joan Davies will say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not the easiest thing. Not the most painless thing. The best. Now we're going to break and come back in a few minutes and answer questions.
I've heard various things about the importance of December 31st in the scheme of what's going on. Is there something about the change in year or whatever that makes it, that where the polarities are far enough apart or something that makes it hard at that point for someone lost in fear to get on the spiritual path? Is that kind of a breaking point? Or
well, not really. It has its symbolic power, which isn't to be denigrated. You give the power to symbolic times, and we will use those symbols as periods of change. As far as when is it more difficult, when is it less difficult, that's really dependent upon each individual's path. It's really not a matter of the general atmosphere. Now, while it is true that energies are in a constant state of change and flux, and there are general times in which one thing is more likely to happen than another on a wide stage, basically it's your own individual process and what triggers it.
Is there something significant in the fact that all of this world meditation is happening at that particular time as far as what's going on?
Well, it becomes significant by its existence. It is significant in the timing for symbolic purposes, but that strengthens the power because people believe in the symbol.
Thank you.
Have we, Plautus, created the conditions on the planet at this point for its healing? My sense is that we have, we've created conditions for everyone to evolve at the time that they were meant to evolve, and that people who are not now on the spiritual path, by taking the steps that we are taking and doing the kinds of meditations that are going on and creating conditions for peace on the planet, that we are accelerating and sort of paving the way for others to come on to a more conscious spiritual path later. Do you agree with that? Do you see that?
Yes, that's by and large true, yes.
And also that people in positions of influence and power, quote unquote, are also awakening and
oh yes, this knows no class barriers or racial barriers or any other kind of barriers. You know, you create a particular kind of life for yourself based on what you need to learn. And even in this life, which is a life of graduation, there are still matters for you to learn, and you're still dealing with fear issues particularly the beginning part of this life, and so there is a specific focus. But the universal timing encompasses all of the individual timings, and so while you are each unique in your process, you are in concert in your timing. You have come here to create an event, to create a change, not simply within yourself, but within the body of humankind, and within the context of the process of change in Earth itself. You are dealing with issues of the Father, that is to say the divine, and you are dealing with issues of the Mother, that is to say the Earth. You are the product of both of those influences, and you are coming into wholeness, uniting both of those influences. And so you will notice, in history, while naturally in any intimate relationship in which one of the people involved or two of the people involved have a great deal more power than the others involved, there are going to be conflicts and angers and hatred and buried resentments and so forth and so on. But in this age of expanding consciousness, you have seen the focus become more specific in each life in psychoanalytic terms, but terms aren't important. What's important is the truth that is being revealed. And that is to say that you are always dealing with Mother Earth, that is to say the human or animal part of yourself, and Father God, that is to say the divine part of the equation. And so as your lives continue and as they grow more sophisticated, you grow closer and closer to ending the barrier that you have inserted between your two selves, then the clarity with which you approach mother-father issues becomes greater. And so in your own life, I dare say there's not anyone here who does not have an issue with one or with both parents, where there is not forgiveness required, or having been given possibly, but where there has always been that issue necessary to deal with. And that will bring the unity into your own life.
Plautus, as we go through each of the stages of the Christ energy, and we go through next spring, and our fear issues come up to either haunt us or get over them or whatever, does it get to a point where it is easier, or does it always seem each step is that difficult?
No, here we have some good news. I'm glad you asked that question, because we're aware that much of what we had to say tonight was not calculated to raise spontaneous cheers. And so dealing with this particular matter, yes. The strength grows, and we've said this, the strength grows and the challenges grow to meet the strength. But what is the goal? The goal is wholeness. And we have said that you are reaching that wholeness. The rest of your life, yes, is going to be devoted to proving the wholeness to yourself, but it's also going to be devoted to using the wholeness to achieve the purpose that is at the heart of your life. The strength that you acquire in this process of death and rebirth, the process of transformation, adds to the sum total of your power. And so as this period comes on, the training is, while not complete, the body of the training has been done so that you may be used in a positive way to help bring about the conditions necessary for the establishment of this new reality. And that's really what we're talking about. Not a new order, although that's encompassed by that, but a new reality. We've said often you create your own reality. That reality is pretty much a subjective phenomenon. And you have created in your past, as human beings, a certain kind of reality. Now as you awaken, you begin to recreate reality in the new image, in the image of the vision that you now see within you, in the image of the vision that you see around you. And so this reality becomes a more positive reality, a unified reality, a reality reflecting your own inner wholeness. And as you join hands together and your numbers increase, and you all have a sustaining and deep-seated belief in the expansion of reality, in the reality of wholeness, in the growth of new ways of thinking and behaving and creating, then that fulfills itself as more and more people lend their belief to that. And so you're creating at the same time that the destruction is taking place.
Plautus, at this time, with the changes that Joan is going through and her reverberations go to all those involved with her, could you explain, I know that the connection with Joan and I has always been there, and with her kids, what the changes will be with Charlene and I taking on what we've determined to do?
No, you don't want me to spoil the fun, do you?
No, I don't want the fun to be spoiled. But I would like to know a little bit about the direction
All right.
and the help.
We ask you to look at the conditions that have been attendant to your own process and to Charlene's process, and we are saying those conditions that you both have shared, the conditions in each of your lives that are common to both of you, issues relating to children, relating to adulthood, to changing your self-image, to the apparent sacrifices that you are making and have made, and recognize that it is these matters that have been the training ground for the process that ensues, and that the dynamics of your interrelationship are not to be separated from the dynamics of this changing setting. That you are going to be, between the two of you, creating a solid ground. You are going to have a new aspect of focus that unifies you, trains you, but also gives you breathing room, space, solidarity, and a new launching pad. Now, really, that's about as much as we can say, except to say that all of the reverberations that have been set in motion by this event in Joan's life are going to have positive results in the lives that are touched, and that the results in those lives are going to flow from the conditions of the sacrifice. Now, we dislike the term sacrifice because it implies losing something, but we use it analogous to what has been regarded as Christ's sacrifice, given on behalf and to others. Not really a sacrifice at all. It is a gift given without condition, and whereby nothing is lost and everything gained. And so is it with the two of you. So is it with all the ripples that flow from Joan's apparent sacrifice.
Plautus? You mentioned the changes and the world, not necessarily world changes, but the New Age dawning and the changes that we're all here to help bring about.
Yes.
Could you give us a little bit of a picture of some of those changes?
The changes that are going to take place in the world as a result of your own inner changes, you can perhaps divine quite clearly by looking at the changes that have gone on within you. You are a microcosm of humanity. That what takes place within each of your lives takes place ultimately within all of your lives. That you are bringing peace, you are bringing centering, you are bringing focus, you are ending the war within. You are bringing unity of purpose. You are freeing your psychic spiritual abilities. You are freeing yourself from the burden of fear that has caused you to spend all of your time fighting each other and fighting yourself, so that you may use all of your energy, not your divided energy, not the blindness of your energy, but a fully visioned, enlightened energy to create ongoing change in yourself and, of course, in all that you do, because everything is energies interrelating. And when more and more people refine the energy that is their being and build its strength even stronger by the interrelationship with others, then the stamp of the nature of that change will be felt in all matters. And so on Earth, you see, now you're the pioneers, and so what you're seeing taking place on Earth has, to a large extent, already taken place in similar stages in your own life, and this is the falling apart. This is the bankruptcy. This is the war. This is the spiritual and physical starvation. These are all of the pressures caused by fear in all of its manifestations that go on and explode and challenge during the early courses of that change. Now, not every human being in this earth alive today is a part of this transformative process. Many are. Many yet unawakened are. Many who are unaware of the language and the specific understandings that you have regarding this are nonetheless a part of it and will become, as time goes by, a more conscious part of the change. But many others are here to be the defenders of the last bastion of the old world and of the old humanity. Does it mean that they are forever lost, as fundamentalist Christians would have you believe, regarding those who either decline the promise extended by the Christ or indeed have never heard of it? No, of course not. Reality is a many-splendored thing. Everyone gets a turn. The experience that you are having now in this world that surrounds you and that you are a part of is not going to be repeated word for word in other realities, but each human spirit is born into a reality of transformation when they are ready for it. The interlacing of realities is not only complex, but infinite. Because you're dealing with infinity. All things are possible. All things exist. And so those who apparently are missing the boat this time, not getting the message and fighting to the last man, the expansion of vision that this new age represents, for them it is another of the frustrating experiences that have formed all of your incarnations up until this time. But their day will come also. As far as more specific, short-range information about what is coming, let us say next year and the year beyond, that we're going to deal with on New Year's Day here.
Plautus, I'm somewhat confused about creating the whole concept of creating your own reality versus timing of the universe and issues. Does an individual have to go through their issues before they can accurately or do a good job of creating their own reality?
Well, you begin creating your reality with the beginning of each incarnation. You bring, by design, certain attitudes and certain preconditions into the design of each life, of each persona that you live, and that combination of attitudes and preconditions is based upon what you specifically need to focus on during that life. So you start off creating a reality based upon inner conditions. Now, the fellow next door was born with a different set of indwelling fears, of issues that need to be challenged and met. and of attitudes that combine to create the character designed specifically to draw to himself and to herself specific kinds of issues, specific kinds of responses, and creating specific kinds of reality. Now, obviously, all of you human beings are more or less agreed that the earth goes around the sun, and the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening, and that who is president, and various other basic fundamental matters. But let's say, all right, you all agree who's president. Well, what are you agreeing on, really? You're agreeing on a name. But within the context of that name comes a whole set of attitudes regarding that person. And so there are some people of goodwill who look at Ronald Reagan and describe a saint in human clothing. And other human beings of goodwill who look upon Ronald Reagan and describe a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so we're not going to take a stand and say you're right and you're wrong, because there are all sorts of shades in between, and all of that is dependent upon how you view the results of that individual's energy, and that depends upon what you need or want or think you need or want in your life. And that depends upon your environment and upon your parentage and upon your class and upon your race and upon your religion and upon 1,000 countless variables. And so out of all of those variables and all of those prejudices, all of that background and all of those needs and all of those desires, you create an image that you think fits Ronald Reagan. So he's president, some guy named Ronald Reagan, but your definition of him is going to be a lot different from the guy next door. And that is creating your own reality. But to recreate that reality based not upon fear, not upon duality, not upon separation from your knowledge, but upon wholeness, upon love, upon joy, upon expansion, that is a truly revolutionary change. Yet, the vision of reality will still be tailor-made because you are still an individual. You are an enlightened and becoming more enlightened individual. But you are still different because you are still in human form. We're not talking about a transformation that takes you out of the realm of humanity, but rather a transformation that makes you human. A perfect balance of the two natures. And but nonetheless different, but based upon different foundations. Yes.
Plautus, how much does our perception of some reality that includes another person affect their reality? In other words, like if I saw Ronald Reagan as a sheep or a wolf in sheep's clothing, would he tend to be more like that? If we all saw him a certain way, would he tend to be more like that? Or
well, of course, it's always self-fulfilling. Yeah, the more you fear war, the more likely war becomes. The more power you invest in any vision, in any belief, the more potent that vision or belief becomes. When large segments of the human race believed in goblins, there were goblins aplenty to go around. When that belief began to wither and to die, goblins became scarce. And now there's hardly any to be found that doesn't have a child behind it. So you do that constantly. You're constantly shifting and changing the nature of the reality. But what you imbue with power, after all, you're gods in training, you're creating constantly. And much of the creation has been subconscious up until this time. Now you're going to be able to create realities and empower concepts based upon a wider and more complete understanding of your own nature, fundamentally, and therefore on the outcome that you desire.
So that sheds a light on we should be more forgiving and loving and so on, because it actually affects.
Oh yes, it has a profound effect, and you've all one way or another, looked at matters of positive thinking and positive visualizing and so forth, and you do. And if you and we tell you this, you start off from home and you're going to go shopping downtown, and you want a parking space. Visualize the parking space before you go, and it'll be there. You'll find it because it exists, and you exist. And you have brought yourselves together in your mind, believed that you would see that space, and so you may call it subconsciously, but you have magnetized you and the parking space until you meet. We would like to conclude this evening's proceedings by asking all of you in your many and varied ways to unite your energy together, to take each other by the hand so that there's a flow of energy going one to the other through all of you. And remember that what you have been receiving for the past months, entering through the crown chakra, is the power to heal. It is an energy that transcends normal, quote-unquote, human limitation. Because human limitation has been based upon the limitation of human vision. And as your vision clears itself and your eyes open and you awaken, you discover that your powers are far greater than you had thought, and that physical law is much more permissive than you had thought. And that you can heal muscle and bone and sinew, and you can recreate tissue, and ultimately you're going to be a self-maintaining being. Begin and continue to develop that awareness in you, to feed that belief, to practice that belief, to share your love, your Christ consciousness, your healing, with all of those who are your brothers and your sisters. Well, tonight we've talked about Joan Davies and her hour of great, great need. We have talked about the potential that lies within the actions that have been taken. She created these actions because her strength of resistance to the deepest roots of her own darkness was so great that the uprooting needed to be powerful. But you are always free beings, always with the power of free choice. And she is making choices within herself now. She is, we know, in the process of choosing life, choosing to face the almost intolerable challenges that greet her now. As you share your strength and your healing, as you share your love, it grows within you. Those whom you heal, heal you. Those whom you love, bring love to you. In the spirit of sharing love, that is the strongest aspect of the Christ consciousness, we ask you to direct that healing energy and that love to Joan Davies at the hospital in Duluth. You don't have to do the healing. Just send that energy as your free gift. Let her use it. Become a part of the human network of spirits awakening to the fact that they are each other, and that which you do for another, you do for yourself. The gift given is the gift received. We thank you all for your attention. And we bid you Godspeed as all of your journeys continue to accelerate.